pjnet.tv. Brand new week, Monday night, 9 o'clock on the East Coast. Boy, do we have a special program for you tonight. Let me kind of make sure everything's okay. Chat room's there waiting. Recording, yes, and we are streaming, and our green room is occupied by our guest. So let's begin the countdown to Studio, get this, 11. Well, good evening, and surprise, surprise, surprise. Welcome to Studio 11, our brand new studio that we have just commissioned today here on pjnet.tv, one of many that you will see. I wanted to make a nice feminine touch because we have a young lady appearing tonight. And folks, if this is half as good as our dry run session we had earlier today, you are in for a treat. And I mean that in all sincerity. And I wonder if JD's here. He's not here yet. Karen Wingate joins us from up north somewhere, originally from the state of Arizona, did you say?
That's right.
Now, when you were born, things were a little different then. You were smaller?
Yes, very small.
And?
Shall I just dive into it?
We're going to dive. Oh, I meant to mute that mic. It didn't happen. Okay. Are your ears rumbling?
Oh, I'm fine.
You're fine. Born blind.
Yes. I was born with a genetic eye defect that my father and my sister and several other family members have. And, we say totally blind. My doctor described it as looking through an industrial strength shower curtain. So just nothing, basically, other than maybe light and darkness.
You could tell if it was daylight.
Yes, probably so. I had my first eye surgery when I was 10 months old, was fitted with glasses, believe it or not, shortly after that. And then I had to have about, 7 or 8 more surgeries after that to bring my eyes up to legal blindness status in my dominant eye. For those who understand the numbers, the left eye was at 2200 and then the right eye was at 2400.
I'll just have to leave it. You could tell it was like looking through an industrial strength shower curtain. So you grew up with this coping mechanisms. How did? There's a lot of ways to cope with that.
I think for the first 9 years of my life, I didn't know that I was different. I knew that I had to sit up in the front row of the classroom, and there were some rough moments that I just didn't understand, but my family treated me like I could see. In fact, this might sound cruel, but my mother, if I dropped something and, the autopilot in you starts to use your fingers to search for it, my mother would say, you look for it, you use your eyes, you've got 2 eyes, use what you have. Even if you have to get your nose to the ground, you get down and look for it. And that does sound cruel to some people, but I am so glad she did that because she made me develop what I had.
Wow. So given that, what were some of your, some of the things we normally associate with growing up, Barbie dolls, doll houses, reading, sports? No?
Sports were a nightmare. I have some very bad memories of, back then we only played kickball and softball in school sports, and I couldn't do that. I was an avid reader. I had bifocals the size of Coke bottle bottoms, your old-fashioned glass ones. And I played the piano. My grandfather built me a special rack to bring my music up and out so that I could see it, this close. And I was a very determined, stubborn young lady. I rode a bicycle behind my mother's back. She told me no, and I did it anyway. I was quite involved in 4-H. I went to public school. I mean, I got out there, did everything everybody else did.
Children can be rather insensitive to other children. Did you experience any of that?
I'm afraid so. I had my amount of teasing, granny glasses, 4 eyes, I in fourth grade, I had a teacher who didn't understand. She felt that I should be at the state blind school, and really prohibited me from a lot of sports activities. And it's interesting, some kids really teased me about that and modeled her behavior, but there were another group of kids that saw that what she was doing to me was unjust and rallied around me. She wouldn't let me play pitcher, catcher, first base, shortstop. Now, as an adult, I wouldn't let me do that either. But she did it in a public way that was humiliating. And so, and that was back in the day where we had a captain. The teacher selected a captain, and then the captain went down the line and chose out their team. And there's a number of us that know what it's like to be chosen as the outfielder, to be the last one and say, "You want her? No, I don't want her. You take her." And I was in that position quite a number of times. But after the kids, my classmates saw this unfair treatment, more often than not, they started choosing me as second base. And then I noticed that, whenever a ball came toward me, I'd go like this instead of catching it. And I noticed that whenever a ball would come toward me, other kids, like the shortstop or the other outfielders, would gather around me as a way of, standing up for me or filling in for me.
Oh, you said. I understood you to say you were second base. You actually were the second baseman.
Yes.
You weren't the base. You were the person. Oh, okay. I thought they were using you for second base.
No, I think kids, even though kids can be cruel, I think kids also have an innate sense of fairness. And when they don't see something that is fair, they will step in and do what it takes to make it right. And that's what I experienced from my classmates.
Looking in the chat room, and I believe it was, we're not real sure, but we think that J.D. Winninger is culpable in your appearance here. So, J.D., if you would please acknowledge in the chat room.
Yes, I want to know.
It's your fault. Yeah, it's and so much. You've had a lot of operations. When trying to put the timeline together, but later, okay, you got through school, then what?
I met my husband, and we had our children. My husband's a minister, and we've served in ministry now for 33 years. Because my eye defect is genetic, there was concern about having children. But because of the way my family raised me, we had this attitude of life is more than an eyeball. And there is so much you can do, regardless of whether you have sight or hearing or whatever. You get out there and you just do the best you can. And so my husband and I made the determination to have children, whether or not we were going to possibly have a child with this eye defect. And we would raise her the same way, with that spirit of determination and dependence on God. Well, being a visually impaired mother was not easy, and there were many times that I would stand at the crib of my children and say, "Oh Lord, would you please just protect them like I cannot?" And God was so faithful to answer that prayer over and over again.
Karen, what I think the details that you give are a testimony, but I tell you, more than the words you're saying, your attitude appears to be absolutely unshakable. You have every reason to feel like you're a victim. You have every reason to be mad at God. You have every reason to check out. You have every reason to go crawl in a hole. But that's not the way you are. How do you... Are you faking it, or is there some secret
to... Oh, my goodness. No. Oh, man. Doggone it. God can do so much. He is so powerful. He can do far more than we can ever think or imagine. His deeds are great and mighty, and I have just seen him work in so many fantastic, impossible ways in my life. And he has given me so much. I'm a speaker, and one of my talks is Strengthen the Struggle. And I even say to people, I'm glad that I have had poor vision because it has made me a stronger person in so many ways that I would have totally missed out on if I didn't have a vision problem. And then as you're probably going to get into the rest of my story, when my vision did improve, I could see the difference. I could see what it was like to not have something and then to have it,
Mm-hmm.
and to truly appreciate the gift that God has given us.
Well, you bring up a good point, because I've traveled on mission trips to some very impoverished places. The worst, I think, was the Dominican Republic, right at the Haitian border. And I saw such abject poverty, but you see, they didn't know they were poor.
Yeah.
And in a way, I feel sorry for people who have every convenience. They're never challenged. They don't. How can you imagine how blessed you are until you are without?
Yes. Yes. Because we just tune it out and not realize that every single thing we have is a gift from God.
Well, we're approaching a season of National Thanksgiving, and it's easy to fall back into a lack of Thanksgiving. For example, I am not grateful. It's not on my radar. It's not on my mind right now that I don't have a toothache. It's when you get now, all of a sudden, when you have the problem, your thoughts center around it, and they begin to dominate your thoughts. So why can't we just relax a moment and enumerate? There's that song, Count Your Blessings. How often do we challenge ourselves to say, Lord, I can hear. Lord, I don't have cancer. When you start enumerating all the problems you don't have, there's one thing when sometimes I would feel sorry for myself, feel like I'm a victim, feel bad, get depressed, and I didn't do it, but I thought about doing it. But when I thought about it, I didn't have to do it. But I thought I could go to the 5th floor of the hospital. That's the cancer ward. And on that floor, I could introduce myself to people who could afford anything they want. Mm-hmm. And they would give it all to trade places with me.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean to puff myself up here, but I go into the eye doctor's office for my 6-month checkup, and I'm always joking with the technicians about cheating on the eye test, and they'll take me through the eye test. And, okay, what number was I today? No, wait a minute, that's not good enough. Let's do it. Let's look at that again. And they go on to other things, and I'm still looking at the chart, going, okay, that's a P, right? No, that's an O, and they're just going, wow. And I say, what line was that? 2080. All right, 2080, yes. And one day my ophthalmologist said, she said, you have such a good attitude about this. She said, I have patients coming in after cataract surgery, and they're whining at me about getting a 2025 reading. And my attitude is, praise God for what you do have. Praise Him that you have anything at all, no matter how small it is. Praise Him that you have that. You only have $5 in your wallet. You've got $5.
Well, that would make you rich in some of the places I've been.
That's right. And you can do a lot with $5.
Yeah.
And I can do a lot with 2200 or 2080 vision.
Yeah. Later on, you began to have some surgeries, and your eyesight has been somewhat restored. Tell us about that process.
Well, because of my genetic defect, and I have like 8 different things wrong with me, which I won't get into the technical details. But along with that, my eyes are underdeveloped and very fragile. And so I always knew that there was a risk that one day I could lose it all, as just in the aging process. And so at around age 55, I noticed some changes and finally went into the doctor for it. And I had a torn retina. At first, they didn't think it could be operated on at all, but 3 months later, the tear had grown, and he opted to do surgery. Before the surgery, he told me, now, I may be able to restore your vision to what it was, or it may be worse. And the tear was in my dominant eye, my good eye. And so I went into surgery knowing that there was a possibility that I could lose the rest of what I had in that one eye. The surgery was done under local anesthesia, and the surgery was taking longer than I thought, because what was happening was the doctor saw what had been done in my childhood surgeries, seen that there was some work that had not been completed, and he thought, I can fix this. Mm. And so he just, without asking me or anything, he just did it. And so 2/3 of the way into the surgery, he said, Mrs. Wingate, I don't like to make predictions, but I think I can guarantee you that your vision will be better than it has ever been before.
We were talking earlier, it's hard to capture those moments. I wish we would have just recorded that. Okay, so one of the things that I observe and I just relish in is God's glory is so evident in his creation. But when you're limited in eyesight, you walked out one night, you'd always heard there were stars.
Yeah. I the science textbooks and other people said there were stars, and I'd look up in the sky and I was good to maybe see 1 or 2 stars in the Big Dipper. Or I'd see to me the moon would look like it would grow bigger or grow smaller. I never could see the actual crescent of it. And you just go on what other people say, and or I would read in the Bible about Abraham's descendants being as numerous as the stars, and I would think, God, if there's only 5 stars in the sky, you're not doing very good on this. So it was about 2 months for my eyes to heal sufficiently for me to start noticing differences in my world. And I'll jump ahead. Since you mentioned the stars, we'll go ahead and jump ahead to that. I knew that I was seeing better, and I knew I was seeing some details. So we arranged for us to go out to a friend's house, her country farm, on a clear night. And I lay on my back, and I looked into the sky. And I could see just the sky would look like it was speckled with white. I could see the Milky Way, and I got up from laying on the ground, and I just twirled around, almost dancing, because there were so many stars they could not be counted.
Okay. Folks, during our dry run, we experienced several disconnects, and she was able to restore it very quickly, and I see that she's done. Yeah, it did it again, and let me push that over there. There we go.
Did you miss anything
no,
I said there?
You were dancing under the stars, so to speak.
I was dancing under the stars, yeah, with the stars, dancing with the stars. It started then. But just incredible. I'd been a Christian all my life, but just how infinite the universe was, that God put all those stars in place, and he did it for us. Earth is his audience hall for us to then see the rest of the universe. He did that for us, and he gave me the ability at age 55 to see it.
Tell us about your writing. We've got a couple minutes left. We wanted to get to that. You write.
Yes, I do. It was a good stay-at-home job, and I have my seminary degree in Christian education. So for 25 years, I wrote Christian education curriculum for several companies, and then I got into magazine writing. After my experience with my eye surgery, I started journaling all the different things that I was seeing, and that book turned into a book that a company has accepted, and the devotional book Open My Eyes, Lord will be released in fall of 2021.
Your website, graceonparade.com.
You can get it by 2 ways, graceonparade.com or just karenwingate.com. And I blog there about God's grace, and there's several different blogs. There's the Grace on Parade blog, and then there's a blog called What I Saw Today that will share more of just different things that I see in the world or that I observe. And for those of you who like to cook, I love to cook, and I have a recipe blog as well that gives recipes for that you can use to minister and share God's grace with other people through your cooking.
I know we're out of time, but tell us about your public speaking.
I also speak whenever I get a chance to. I'm available for women's retreats or women's days and for podcasts. I teach a Bible study weekly, and I just love to share God's grace and what He is doing any chance I get.
Well, I won't be going to any women's retreats, but I sure do enjoy hearing what you've got to say. And it's not just what you're saying, it's the joy that is apparent in your spirit. And you have blessed us in so many ways. The chat room is just alive with comments. And I want to say special thank you to all of you in the pjnet.tv chat room, the heartbeat of PJNet. And Karen, thanks. So I'm glad that we intersected and connected, and I am just grateful for your testimony and your attitude. You've encouraged us all, and we appreciate you sharing your story with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Wow, what a fun time. Folks, whatever you're going through, there's hope, okay? It doesn't have to affect your attitude. That, what you see on the screen right now, is the eagle eye view of the eagle's nest, one of our many orbiting cameras that surround the pjnet.tv studio. Folks, it's not over. We have more surprises coming at the bottom of the hour. Don't touch that dial. No, stay right where you're at. Okay, right there. Casper from Colorado joins us every Monday night at the bottom of the hour, 9:30 Eastern Time, and I'll have to get ready for him. I'll leave you now with a challenge, actually 2 questions, and I hope that you will consider these questions carefully. First, what is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? Number 2, how long ago was that? Folks, most of us are not blind. We have no excuse. I certainly hope that we'll never allow ourselves to be satisfied with either end.